Now, okay. If you stand for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States,
to the
and one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, Alex, you want to do roll call?
Frith. Here. Vanessa. Libby.
Here.
Ryan. Tanya.
Here. We have a quorum. I think we're going to make a change to the agenda and switch the special event request before Buzz. So can we get a motion to change the agenda?
I'll make a motion to change the agenda tonight. Switch A and B. We'll do the special event request from Angelica Rangull for Mother's Day worship first, and then budget and finance update second.
I second.
Hang on just a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Now we need a motion to approve minutes from April 21st.
Motion to approve the minutes on April 21st, 2025.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Angelica, just come up to the mic here. Yeah, that's fine.
Hi, my name is Angelica. I'm the admin with Gateway Community Church of Fortville. We're the church that's located right next to Landmark Park. We've held worships in the park before, and so we're asking if we can please use the pavilion for the park for Mother's Day and Father's Day service. We don't need anything. We use electricity from the church. We use the church trash cans. The only thing is we do set up a table for coffee and donuts, which we provide from the church. And we start at 9. We do a rehearsal with music, and then we have worship that actually starts at 10. It'll go until 11, and then we end worship, and then everybody just goes back to the church.
Okay. Simple enough.
Do we need a second?
And it's on May 11th, and then Father's Day would be June 15th.
Second.
If it's going to be the same thing, how many people are you expecting?
Our attendance is anywhere between 40 to 55. We do encourage the congregation to invite family and friends. So at most, I would say maybe 60. And we bring our own chairs, lawn chairs, and we encourage people to bring blankets too.
I would say if your Father's Day is going to be the same as this pretty much, except a different day, I think you guys can make a motion to accept both of them for
Same
Father's Day and Mother's Day. Is it same times and everything?
What's
Yes.
the date for Father's Day? Does anybody know?
June
June
15th.
15th.
Just save you a trip back.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
I'm good.
I'll make a motion to approve the Gateway Church Mother's Day and Father's Day worships for May 11th and June 15th.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You're
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
But
Okay, next up, we have the budget and finance update from Buzz Krohn. You have the floor, Buzz.
How are you all tonight?
Good.
For the record, I'm Buzz Krohn with O.W. Krohn Associates. We're CPAs and municipal advisors. Used to be in Westfield, now we're in Noblesville, but here to talk primarily about the refinancing we need to do for the water bond anticipation note that was issued back in 2021. And it matures October 15th of this year. So we need to do some things in order to facilitate that refinancing. It's it's not really a refinancing. It was anticipated that that would be the sort of the swing loan to build the improvements at the water treatment plant. And in order to make those bonds marketable, we've got to achieve certain debt coverage ratios, and that involves water rates. Water rates have not been changed for 16 years. And when they did change them, I think we only did we rescinded the third phase of the approved rate increase. We were under the IURC jurisdiction. We got approval of a three-phase rate increase back in, was that 2009? And when we got to the point where we were generating enough after the phase two to cover the needs that we had at that time. So I know everybody gets their utility bills all on one bill card, but we're just talking about the water piece of the utility bill, which I think your minimum users for 3,000 gallons, which is about 50% more than most minimum charges allow in other similarly situated water utilities, is about $17.22, I believe. So right now you've got, if not the lowest, but real close to the lowest water rates. Anderson has been a pretty low water rate, but they're in at the IURC right now. Dennis sent me the rate filing that they have, and they're over doubling their water rates over the next few years. So that case is still pending, but I do have some rate comparisons we'll look at. Are you finding me in there? Prepared some slides. I think you all have copies of those slides, but for the benefit of the interested public, there we go. That looks like the stuff. There. So, yeah, and Michelle Davis is one of our new up and comers. She just passed her MA certification recently. I thought she was going to be here tonight, but she just had a baby recently. So there may be, I told her she didn't have to come, but if she wanted to, we'd certainly welcome. She helped work on a lot of this, this stuff. We can just flip through. Is that the PowerPoint one or the PDF? Okay. That one's probably easier to, there you go. Okay, let's go ahead and jump to the second slide. Again, the last rate adjustment was approved by the IURC back in 2009. And it was the rate case we filed it in 2008, and the test year was actually 2007. So it's probably 17 years old as far as the data that was used back then versus, you know, the 2024 results that we've used for these proposed rates. Again, we had an approved three-phase settlement. We only implemented I think that should be the second phase, actually. Right now, the current minimum charge for 3,000 gallons is $17.64 per month. I may have said $17.22 earlier, but I stand corrected. Back in 2022, we proposed sort of a gradual I don't know that we ever made it to the council, but because of other things that were going on in the town with respect to the roads all being torn up, and, you know, it was right after COVID, or, you know, all that stuff kind of hit at the same time. And so the original idea of phasing in the rate increase over a few years kind of got pushed back to compensate for the other issues that the town was facing at that time.
Buzz, do you remember when we got out of the IURC?
It was right after that rate case. or shortly there.
No, I thought it
We
was,
did that. 2020, I think was the
2020.
first.
and when we got
21
out
or-
of, when we got out of the IURC, I know the council at that time made a commitment to the customers that they wouldn't be looking at doing any rate hikes for at least a year or two. So
Yeah,
that's kind of why some of that's got
I
postponed.
think it was maybe back in 2018, wasn't it? When,
Doesn't seem like it's been that long.
I was on the council, so that was my first year was 20.
so you think it was in?
I think it was 20 or 21.
Okay. Well, we did it before we did the project because otherwise we would have had to, no.
Yeah.
It's a year-long ordeal and you spend literally, $100,000 or $150,000 to go through, having utility attorneys preparing written testimony and exhibits for going through that. And there's only, maybe 10 or 12 water utilities in the state left that remain under IURC jurisdiction, municipal utilities. The town went forward to opt out and maybe it was 2020, but,
It was.
and I think it was only a 1-year commitment, but it's been 5 years since that time. So we're well past that commitment stage. In fact, that was one of the reasons we didn't do something right away when we did the bond issue, the bond anticipation note through Greenfield Bank, and they gave us a sweetheart deal. So there hadn't been a real big incentive to pay them off early either, because rates are different now than they were back when that deal was struck in 2021.
Tanya, you're right. It was October of 2020. That's fine.
Okay.
Yep.
I should have looked that up, but
That's okay.
I know we were talking about it before 20.
talking about it back in 2000.
Well, we did it all before the water thing even started, so yeah.
But at any rate, this $11 million bond anticipation note that was used to pay for the new water treatment plant is maturing in, about 5 months from now. So, and so we've got to be able to have rates in place to support paying that off. We're assuming a 20-year bond issue. We're also recommending that we take the capacity fees you've generated in the last 4 or 5 years. You've got over $1 million in capacity fees that we could use to help buy that bond issue down. In fact, I am proposing that maybe we even use $1.5 million of your existing cash on hand so that our proposed bond issue would only be $9.5 million. Let's go ahead to the next slide. Yeah, you've had pretty steady growth over the last 4 years. In 2020, your customer base was about 2,600. Today, it's about 3,600. So you've added basically 1,000 customers over the last 4 or 5 years. If we continue at that pace, of approximately 200 new customers per year, that will generate significant capacity fees and connection fees and things of that nature that are outside of the monthly water bill. So that's one of the other pieces of the puzzle that we're recommending, is to bring those up a little bit, more in line with what we're seeing in other communities. I think we're proposing 1,900 for 18 or 1,900. I have to double check my numbers.
What is that? McCordsville's getting 1,900 for capacity fees. And what are we at? 1,700?
1,700 on sewer.
We're at
30
1,700.
It's 34 altogether for sewer. It's,
Yeah, that's the connection and the
1,200.
availability fee, but
1,200
on water, it's less.
582
Yeah.
per tap.
On water, it's only 1,200, and then I think the water connection fee is only, it's less than $600, I think.
582.
Yeah,
About
approximately
1,800 altogether.
right now, yeah.
And McCordsville's charging 1,900 and we're charging.
Well, they
It's
don't
not-
provide water though. They just,
Oh, yeah. That's right.
so we're pretty close to them on the sewer, but they don't have water. Citizens addresses their water utility, so they don't.
Does Fishers have their own water?
No,
No.
Citizens does that one too. But Fisher's charges on the sewer side
I know.
quite a bit more than what we're charging here. So, and Noblesville's the same, you know, they all have pretty high capacity fees. And what that does is it helps fund, as soon as we issue the bond issue, we'll have to start funding up a debt service reserve account. So that's about 20% a year of your total annual debt service payment. So I'll get to that here in just a minute,
Oh, okay,
but
sorry.
no, you're fine. Right now, yeah, again, we're recommending to buy down with $1.5 million of cash on hand, and then issuing $9.5 million of water utility revenue bonds, payable solely from the water utility, not from property taxes or income taxes or anything. This has nothing to do with Senate Bill 1. And again, back in, you had a bond issue in 2009. That's, we paid that off in 2021 with cash that had accumulated from growth, you know, between 2009 and 2021. So we were able to retire those bonds early. And that made it a real clean deal for Greenfield Bank when they bought the bond anticipation note. So this new bond issue, the 9.5 million that we're discussing to take out the bond anticipation note, would be the only debt for the water utility. And after a certain number of years, we can pay those off early if we collect enough in capacity fees going forward, which unless things drastically change, that is certainly in the realm of possibility. There's usually a 10-year call feature if we go out on the open market and issue these bonds, but we may, I don't know if Greenfield Bank would want to go out 20 years, but I thought we might talk to them first and just.
Do they
see.
commonly do that?
I'm sorry?
Do they commonly do that? Go out? When will they go out?
Banks don't like going out
Yeah.
that far as a rule, you know. 5 years was a sweet spot. 10 years probably good. And, you know, we may be able to, if we can get them to go to 15 years, it narrows our bond coverage ratio, but we're not counting any of the capacity fees in the bond coverage ratio. And there's some other things we could do to sort of credit enhance it with them. But since you keep all your money there, it's a good place to go first.
Yeah.
And they've been very accommodating on a number of deals for the town in the past. So let's jump to the next slide. Adam, thank you. The next slide shows the last 3 years of operating cash flows from utility operations. You see some growth in the revenues from 22 to 24. We're up to about 1,250,000 in metered sales, but 257,000 in hydrant fees. I think we're talking about just capping that at 200,000 going forward, a lump sum fee from the town general fund annually, instead of paying as much as you're paying right now, and then not adding on to that with the rate increase to keep property taxes. The relief there is probably going to be more needed than on the water side, especially with, you know, what's going on with Senate Bill 1. We are collecting money from the outside city customers since they don't pay property taxes to Fortville. We have a monthly fire protection surcharge that we put in years ago. That had to get approved by the IURC too. Do you remember, was that done after 2009 or was that part of that?
That was done afterward.
That's what I was thinking, that we did that afterwards. Because we could do that on a 30-day filing, which we often tease and say it's really a 300-day filing, but it's supposed to be 30-day filing. We don't have to worry about that anymore though, so. Operation and maintenance expenses have hovered around $1 million to $1.2 million during the past 3 years, producing a net operating receipts of right around $500,000. And that's the net operating receipts in the rate making formula has to cover your bond payments and your debt service coverage ratio. And if you have capital projects, that gets thrown in there too. Now, I think you should be pretty well set, knock on wood, with the water treatment plant for a number of years, especially with all the work you've had to do to get the water to the highest quality that you can get. So we're not anticipating a lot of new expansion unless, are your water storage facilities adequate or do you need to look at?
I think
tower?
as far as the towers, we're okay for right now. Probably our next big expense is going to be the maintenance of the towers.
Yeah.
And if we grow, let's see, we got a 2.2 million gallon plant now. And we're at about 600,000 gallons a day during the like winter months, but the high demand season, we'll get up to 1.2 million, something like that. So as we grow a few more 100,000, we're probably going to need to look at another well and additional filter to add into the plant.
So the new plant capacity is 2.2 million.
Correct.
And how much storage do we have up in the air?
800,000.
800,000. So that's sort of right in between your average and peak, then I guess. Your peak is 1.2, did you say?
Mhm.
And your average is 600. You're closer to average, but that's you're still over the average. But you know,
Well, and I think in talking to Dave, he's
if you get another 1,000 customers, that might change too.
Yeah.
But
in talking to Dave, I know he's concerned about turning the water over in the towers a little more
Yeah.
often. So more
Yeah,
customers with the existing towers would be good.
yeah, if you have too much storage, yeah, it gets stale in the
Yeah.
tower.
But, is the chemical and rock salt, is that gonna be the new norm? Jumping through, it means like
Well,
3 times higher,
I think we made some adjustments on that.
2022.
I think we assumed that was going to come down a little bit, but I think you're adding polymers though to make it more clear. So,
So is that the new norm, 118,000?
you know, that's what we're assuming that's going to stay in that range, you know.
Okay,
The new plant does use more
Yeah.
salt than the old plant did.
that's just a question, so.
Yeah, not many places soften the water like you guys do.
Right.
I mean, I'm always dumping those big yellow bags in my softener at my house.
What's purchase power and utilities?
That's the pumping for pumping the water out of the wells and pumping it out of the.
Electric bills,
So it
pretty
costs-
much.
It's primarily the electric bill, yeah.
That's almost
Yeah.
doubled also.
Yeah, electric rates, well, you're probably pumping more water. You've probably had a lot of flushing and different things as you've
Yeah,
gone
for
through
new
the
plant, yeah.
orientation, but
So that
we
number
thought-
might go down.
that could come down a little bit. It was, you know, some of it could be timing also, because if you look back at 22, you know, it was 82,000, then it went down to 68, and then some of it could be just timing of payments, but that's about the number we're going forward with, so. Overall, on the very next slide, we didn't really change the total projected operation and maintenance expenses are a little over 1.2 million, which isn't too much more than really what we spent last year. So some of those specific categories, Fritz, that you were asking about, we did back off a little bit, but you're going to have inflation in labor and insurance and all the other things. So, but it's not too much different than what we experienced last year. We've been paying interest on the bond anticipation note. When we refinance that, that goes away. But we replace that, again, that should say 9.5 million. It says 11. I apologize for the typo there. But we are assuming a $9.5 million 20-year bond at 5%. We just sold a $50 million convention center bond in Bloomington that closed last week. And the net interest cost on that was about just under 4.7%. So again, we have higher rates that we're recommending in the enabling ordinances that will be forthcoming probably, assuming everybody agrees we got to refinance that ban. Probably coming in the next meeting, and then obviously there'd have to be a public hearing on the rates. So that will probably filter into the June timeframe, I would guess, and then it takes a while to get the programming redone and so on. So the new rates probably would take effect maybe in the month, maybe the usage month before we do the bond anticipation note refinancing, and the billing would kick in right about that same time. We have a $40,000 annual pilot payment in lieu of taxes. As you recall, between the water and sewer, we're paying off that MPO bond issue so we didn't have to levy a tax to pay that back. And that still has several years left on that. And then we built in a 2% depreciation allowance, which would also be our debt coverage number. What we have, the depreciation allowance will provide about coverage ratio of 147%. If we go to the open market, to get a real good bond rating, you'd want that to be 200%. The minimum ratio for issuing any parity bonds going forward would be 125%. But we want to come in a little bit stronger than 125% coverage. So we used a 50-year depreciation rate on the plant to compute that particular revenue requirement that would be factored into the rates. That would also be a place that you could use to make capital improvements going forward. And with you're not going to do any major projects with that, but it takes care of smaller projects. And you could accumulate the money and then do it on a bigger project. But we'll hopefully also have capacity fees that don't show up in the rate making formula. Bond buyers don't want to, when they buy a bond issue, they want to make sure that the people that are being served right now are covering the payment. So we can't really project a lot of growth in the rate making formula. And actually the Indiana Code basically says that the rates shall be sufficient to cover these statutory minimum revenue requirements. Now, the pilot payment could be considered an optional payment, but since we've pledged that to debt payment, it's really like part of our debt service, even though we're calling it a pilot payment. And I think 80,000 comes from the sewer department every year. Is that right, Joe?
I'm sorry, I was doing some calculating. What was that?
I was just talking about the pilot payments. We get 40,000 from the water, and I believe it's 80,000 from the wastewater,
There could be, I was thinking it was 40 and 60, but you may be
or maybe
right.
it's 40 and 60. I didn't bring I could look it up, but I knew it was higher.
Yeah,
And then, that's right, because the TIF was in there, but they prepaid all that. And we bought that note down, I believe,
right.
with those payments, so. But for the water utility, you just have to worry about the 40,000. Again, our metered sales, using the year-end cutoff is about 1,260,000. And about 1.7 million in total projected normalized operating revenue, and a shortfall to make the bond payment. The bond payment is going to be 765,000, assuming it sells for 5% or below. And that's, the revenue shortfall's a little bit less than that. It's about 100,000 less than that. So that's really what's driving the need for a water rate adjustment, is the new bond payment. And for a 3,000 gallon customer, that amounts to about a $8.60 rate adjustment. And 4,000 gallon customer goes up to about $35.33. Again, if we get 200 new homes per year at 1,800 per unit, which is the new proposed capacity fee, that could generate an additional 360,000 a year. So that money can accumulate for other projects like the new well field, or the, what was the other expansion thing you had on the, was it primarily just the well field?
Wells and the filters.
You'd have to add another filter right at the
Mhm.
plant. So, I mean, that could be $1 million easily, I would think,
Yeah.
those two things. So, but you do have another source coming in if the growth continues at the rate we're seeing right now. Let's jump to the next slide. One of the other things we were asked to do was to come up with, simplify the rate structure, and then also have it so the people that are, draining the utility in those peak months, watering their lawns. I think you had somebody using 100,000 gallons of water,
150.
150,000 gallons of water.
And one,
Instead of them paying, half of what everybody else is paying, we've just about doubled that bottom rate block. We've actually merged, instead of having an odd cutoff, I don't think you can meter down to the gallon. You've got a 3,333 gallons is the first rate block. We'd like to just round that off to 4,000 gallons. The second rate block, we would suggest kind of combining portions of the next two and go to the next 6,000 gallons. And that should capture all the, even a big residential user, 10,000 gallons a month is, you probably don't have that many of them, but I'm sure you have some, they would pay in that second rate block. You should catch most of the residential customers, except for those real extreme ones that have been problematic in the past when you didn't have the source of supply to sell them.
I don't think, in town, we hardly ever have a problem. It's out of town, because right now, if people water more, they gotta pay more in the sewer.
Right.
In the future, did we ever think about separating the two so we can meter both? Or is it just
Meter both.
combined with sewer and water?
you want to meter the sewer?
Well, no, what I was saying is, because that's the problem that we're having right now. Fishers will just, or outside
That's-
our area, just water. way
We're
too
not
much.
having the problem in town because the
Yeah.
sewer rates are depending on the water consumption, which is an incentive for people to conserve water. And the people outside of the corporate limits is not on our sewer system. The water's cheap, they'll go 150,000 gallons of water and, you know, a couple $100 and they're,
So does the rate go down as the more water they use?
Yeah, but not near
Why is that?
like it did. We went,
You'd think that would go up to incentivize them
Well-
not to use more.
and the only thing is you've got other customers that, you know, large commercial industrial customers that, you know, would theoretically pay the same rates. If we had it go up, we'd have to single out the residential customers. So you are seeing significant increases in those higher rate blocks. For instance, you know, on a percentage basis, you know, when you look at $1.97 to $3.65, that's almost double. So we are addressing that, I believe.
How many commercial businesses do we have out of the area though, right now?
I mean, outside of
Yeah,
town.
city limits.
I don't believe there are any.
See if I have,
I don't think there are any. I don't think there are any commercial outside of the town limits.
it's primarily just subdivisions, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure, but.
And some of the biggest users are the homeowners association for the landscaping along the front of the new developments and even,
Can we charge some kind of fee, I guess, for excessive use? I mean, like, we would think to maybe stop some of those outside of town that are doing that. Is that something you can do? Are you then picking out people and,
we've actually got a sprinkler schedule for irrigation.
yeah,
The staggers, but it's not been approved and adopted for any kind of fines or so we can go after anybody for doing that. In fact, we had somebody when we posted that last year, the year before, they called and said, well, what happens if I do go ahead and irrigate every day? I said, well, are you gonna shut me off? No, we won't. We said, well, I'm gonna keep doing
And
it.
a lot of them kept doing it.
They're charging less and less, like where we charge.
Well, that's consumption, you know, just like anything else. You consume more, so you get a better price at a larger amount. So I understand that, but I'm talking about residential. That would, you know, be around the 6 or 10,000 or whatever. You have a certain level and then stop it at that point, and after that, it becomes excessive. I don't know how you come up with that number, but
Well, there's in that third proposed rate step where we go to the next 40,000 gallons. That's over double the next 10,000 gallon rate on the existing structure. And it's, you know, 2.5 times the over 23,000 gallon rate on the current system. So we are significantly narrowing that gap between the initial user block and the final user block. But the theory behind having, you know, a higher fee on the first couple of rate blocks is that that's where you want to capture your cost of having the service available, really, whether, and the minimum charge is really there to at least get something, you know, whether people use it or not.
Right.
There's a cost of having that there.
Right.
And I guarantee it's more than $25 a month.
yeah,
Because regardless of how much water they use, you have to have the pipe size to a certain size. You have to provide fire protection capacity in your system. You have to, and again, the true variable costs of treatment are really power and chemicals, you know. And that's not, you know, in the big picture, that's a fraction of what the costs that you're needing to recover. Let me see if I had calculation on that.
So it's going up $2.90 a month
The,
for 4,000 gallons.
yeah, hang on a sec here. The, for 3,000 gallons, it's going up $8.61 per month.
Where's
For,
that?
That's
for
on the previous- on the- on the
150,000.
previous slide, I think. The rate right now.
I was looking at this right here.
But I don't see how, I also don't see how that matches up because on this, I don't know which slide this is, the pro forma revenue requirement slide.
Okay,
It says at the rate of 3,000 gallons, it's going to increase $8 and change per month. And then at the rate of 4,000 gallons, it's going to increase by,
$12.
almost like $13.
Do I have that chart in there?
And, but on the following slide, it doesn't look like those are metered rate blocks. So I was sort of
Can you
curious about
go
that.
to the rate comparison slide with a graphic? I think it's one more forward, yeah. Oh. It's go one more forward and then we'll come back to this one. One more, sorry. Another one, sorry. There we go. This is the rate comparison for 3,000 gallons. And that will catch, all of your minimum users. And the only rate that was less than what you're charging right now is on this is Anderson, but their new proposed rate for 3,000 gallons is going to be $37 a month. That'll phase in over a couple of years, but I don't know how long it's been since they did their last increase, but I think Dennis is working with them on that. And he provided me with some of the IURC filings. And if they get their rate approved, it will eventually end up at $37 a month, where yours will be $26 a month, 26 and a quarter. And a lot of Cambridge City is going to have another big water project. Some of these other ones, they're all at different phases. McCordsville is by Citizens Energy, so they're the biggest water utility in the state. So you'd expect them to have some economies of scale, but and Danville is about where you are or where you would be under this proposal. On the revenue requirement page, back to that. You want to slide back a few more slides there? Sorry about that, Adam, making you work here. Yeah, but go back more. Is this the page that you were questioning? Yes.
Well, it doesn't look like it lines up because on slide, looks like slide 5 here, you're noting rate increases at 3,000 gallons and at 4,000 gallons. And I don't really know anything about it because I don't,
Okay.
I don't really pay attention to that stuff. But on the slide 6, it says that currently the metered rate blocks are 3,333. It doesn't look like there's a 3,000 and a 4,000 gallons.
Yeah, we're
Rate
we're
block.
proposing to consolidate some of the rate blocks. The blue ones up on the screen are what you currently have. The yellow ones up on the screen are what we're proposing.
So you're proposing to get rid of the 3,000 is 3,000 gallons a metered rate block now?
3,000 is the current minimum, but the first rate block is 3,333 gallons, which is just kind of an oddball, cutoff. So I wanted to clean those up, and
But what does that mean? Is 3,000 gallons?
that
Minimum.
means, okay, for 3,000 gallons, you're going to pay $8.75 times 3. These rates are in thousands of gallons.
But where's times 3 here?
I'm sorry?
Where's times 3? What do you mean by times
Okay,
3?
look on the first rate block in the yellow. The first 4,000 gallons we're proposing at $8.75 per 1,000 gallons.
So,
And
It might have been easier just to write in
yeah,
the number than that.
well, but then is there still a 3,000 gallon?
3,000 gallon minimum is in the yellow below that, where for a 5/8 inch meter, which most residential customers have, their minimum bill would be for 3,000 gallons. If you take 3 times the 875, hopefully that comes out to 26.25.
It does.
And a 3/4 inch meter has an area ratio of 1.4 times the 5/8 inch meter. So that minimum charge is established at 4,200 gallons. And so in that scenario, you're paying 4 times the 875 plus 0.2 times the 655.
Four times the 875.
4 times the 875 plus 0.2 times 655.
What's 655 here?
That's the second rate tier for the next
655 per thousand
Oh,
gallons.
I see. So your proposed rate blocks are 3,000 and 4,200?
Well, the rate blocks, well, that's the minimum gallons that we're suggesting. And that's what, if we were regulated by the IURC, they would use those area ratios to establish the minimum gallons. So that's a little bit different than, it's not materially different, but it is a little bit different than the gallonage you have in the current, if I take your current rates, minimum rates, and go through the current rate blocks, I come up with those oddball gallons that are in the blue, 3,015 for the minimum charge, 6,112 for the 3/4 inch minimum, So we're basically just cleaning those up to make them consistent with the.
Well, I don't really understand what the meaning of the rate block is, how it's meaningful if there's still a minimum that sounds more meaningful. So I'll use myself as an example, okay?
Sure.
I doubt that I use 3,000 gallons of water because I don't drink the water. I buy filtered water because there was too much disgusting water coming out of the water treatment
Yeah.
plant when I moved here. So I don't think I use 3,000 gallons. So I probably am at that 3,000 gallon minimum, right?
So is your
And-
water bill do you have a copy of it with you by chance or?
No, I don't carry it around. No,
So-
but,
Well, your
no,
minimum
my,
right now would be $17.64 if you're using 3,000 gallons or less.
right. So that is effectively, 3,000 is effectively the first, metered rate block because that's the minimum. Effectively, that's the first block. So if you use 3,000 or less, your bill for the water currently, it would be 1764.
Correct.
And then what you're proposing is that bill would go up by $8.75,
Go up to.
like that portion of that bill. So somebody like me, for example, my water bill would go up automatically by $8.75.
It's a little bit less than that, but it's pretty close to that.
But I would still,
I think it's 861, but
okay, but 8.75 is at the top of the first box.
Yeah,
Okay.
your bill would go up $35.
No,
it would go
No.
it would
No.
go up to $26.25.
yes, that's what I'm
Oh, at
tracking.
3,000.
At 3,000, but that's what I'm saying. Now, see, but the box at the top makes it
4,000
look.
is for a bigger meter.
Oh, okay.
That's
No,
40
but no, Fritz, that's what I was wondering. The box at the top looks like that the 3,000 gallon rate is getting eliminated and it's gonna start being counted at 4,000. That was my question.
No,
As
it's just
well.
that for the first 4,000 gallons, you're paying that same $8.75 rate.
Minimums are different.
But the minimum is an independent calculation
We
based
need to
on,
put that in.
3,000.
Ask these questions because
No, that's fine.
People.
the
want
residents
to
are gonna be asking us those
Oh, I-
questions
I
also.
get it.
Just to kind of take a step back, I just wanted to do my usual thing, which is we need to raise $9.5 million, right? That's like step one.
We need, yeah,
And we need to raise 9.5 million after the 1.5 million that you found somewhere else. And that's to pay for the water treatment plant. And so you propose to get a loan or a bond or something like that.
yes.
And so it's going to be 9.5 million. And your proposal is that we raise the water rates so that everybody's water bill goes up by at least $8.75. $8.61
That would be,
For the minimum.
yes.
at
That-
the minimum,
that would
right?
be
At
the
least,
minimum-
I'm
that
saying
would
at
be the
least
minimum increase,
8.61
Correct.
per month. And then does that extra cost go away when the bill is paid?
Well, it's 20 years out, so
Yeah.
a lot
Oh,
of
it's a
things happen
20-year.
in 20 years.
Oh, because I thought you guys were talking about 5 and 10 years earlier, so I thought it was shorter than that.
Well, that's what banks normally like. That's their sweet spot for term. So if we can't get at least if we could get a 15-year term and a good rate from Greenfield Bank, that would be ideal. 20 years would be the best, but I think if we're dealing with them, they'll maybe be a little softer on counting the capacity fee income as part of their projected revenue stream, whereas if we go through, we have to get a bond rating from Standard & Poor's to market these bonds to the open market, they're going to be a lot more strict on, when they assign a bond rating, yeah, Fred.
I got a question. On 40,000 gallon. If you go, you're better off going to 50,000 gallons because your monthly payment for 40,000 gallons would be $204 a month. But if you use 50,000 gallons at $365, your bill's only $182.
That's not the way that works. The way that.
You're at 50,000 when you get to that final rate block. Because you got 4, 6, and 40, that's 50,000. So over 50,000 is when it goes to the 365.
Yeah, but you would want to hit the 50 if you're at 40 because then you're paying less.
No, you're not.
Oh, okay. Well,
Or-
Well, because you're still paying per amount of water. You're still.
Well,
paying
if you
for
notice that,
the-
I'm sorry, I
just
didn't mean
looking
to-
at the numbers.
if you look at the rate structure there at the top, say 40,000 is showing $5.10. That's per 1,000 gallons
Yeah.
over 6,000 up to 40. So that when you go to 50, that price stays in there, but then you add 365 per
Yeah,
thousand between 40 and 50.
Higher rate block.
Okay, do me,
So you
yeah.
pay
do me a
all
favor.
the-
Rewrite that a little bit better. 'Cause
Okay.
just looking at it,
It's what the first next over, I think is, but it's. Okay, like the first.
yeah.
It's like from 4,000 to 6,000, from 6,000.
Everybody would pay $875 for the first 4,000 gallons. The next 6,000 gallons, they would pay $655 per thousand. The next 40,000, they'd pay $510 per thousand. And then over 50,000 gallons is where they get the 365 rate. So they all have to go through the
So
same
they're
rate
paying
steps.
this Here. At 50,000.
At 50,000, yeah. And that basically,
So you would have to use up 10, then another 50, then you'd have to get to.
you'd have to use 50,000 to get to that over 50,000 rate block. Does that make sense? Or,
365 doesn't refer to the 50,000.
It doesn't go here. You gotta build all this up.
And you're
First,
paying.
do me a favor, write that
Yeah.
better, a little better.
okay.
I still don't see why we're charging less and less to use more and more water.
Well, again, the theory behind, if we wanted to look at a completely different rate structure where we would have to have enormous base charges instead of minimum charges, and then that would drive the cost per thousand down. The early rate blocks is what attempts to pick up the cost of having the service there. Once you've covered that cost, then you're getting more down to variable treatment costs, which in its purest sense, once you've covered all your fixed costs, the only variable costs are really power and chemicals, which would be a lot less than 365 per thousand gallons. But by going through all, the way it's structured, we're picking up all those costs in the various rate blocks instead of, you could, like on the sewer utility, that's a common way of doing the treatment rates, where you just take all the total operating costs and divide it by the flow, and that's the rate per thousand, by the billed flow. There's a big difference between billed flow and treated flow, especially on wastewater. But this is a very common structure for water utilities. I can tell you that.
Okay.
No,
So
no, we
just
just
sort of,
need to explain
Yeah.
it to people
No,
when they ask.
But they all have to go through, everybody pays the same rates for the first 4,000 gallons, the next 6,000, the next 40,000, and then,
the first 3,000 though.
well, the rate block, the 3,000 is the minimum. That's sort of an independent calculation from the rate blocks.
But I think along the lines of what Fritz was saying, I think that's the trouble that I have with that box up there as well, because, so for example, somebody who's using 3,000 gallons or less like me, there's no row, there's no first row there for that person. It's, that box suggests that you're automatically gonna be billed for 4,000 gallons.
You're in the 4,000 block.
4,000 rate block, but you're only getting billed for 3,000 gallons as a minimum.
Oh, okay.
But
Well, and
it
yeah,
is kind of,
Bunch of people. Showers, kicked up to 3,900 gallons per month. You'd still be at 875 per 1,000 gallons.
right,
On
up
that,
to,
up to the 4,000.
Right,
If you had
yeah,
another
it's a
person
rate.
Move in with you, and you shot up to 5,900. Well, then the first 4,000, you'd be at 875. Next month, yeah.
right, it's a rate bucket rather than, yeah, whereas there's a minimum, which I think is still relevant, but that's okay. I think it's just a little bit confusing, but
Buzz, you think it'd be clear if, like the top yellow box where it says first 4,000, the actual rate is gonna be 26.25 for 3,000. So then it would be up to 4,000 would be the 875 per thousand. And then where it says next 6,000, maybe up to 6,000 would be 655, and then up to 40,000 from there is 510. I mean, I get it. I mean,
Yeah, we
that's the way
can-
it's always
Yeah.
read, but
we can get these astute lawyers to drop the ordinance.
Oh.
40,000, yeah. I have a question. Is there any other way to raise money other than raising people's water bills?
Well, we are putting in higher capacity fees, and system development charges is kind of the broad term for any capital cost for new development. We want them to pay in what everybody else has built in as equity over the last 30, 40 years.
What is the capacity fee?
That's a new developer. If they come in with a 100-unit subdivision, okay, they're going to pay, the new capacity fee is $1,800 per house. So if they come in with a 100-unit subdivision, that's going to be $180,000 they write the check for it before you sign their plat approval. So you get, that money goes right into the capacity fee fund. And that's basically where we were getting the money to buy down the bond anticipation note. You can use that for other capital projects, but in the last 4 years or 5 years, we've accumulated about $1 million. And we're proposing to buy down the bond issue with that amount. Now, if we can work a deal with the local bank, they may be receptive to being a little more lenient on the expectation of future growth, future capacity fees. But we probably have to do a special pledge in the ordinance to pledge those fees as well. But after our meeting tonight, I was going to meet with Jenna over at Greenfield Banking Company just to see how long a period they'd be willing to go.
Then like apartments, so they pay $1,800 per unit.
Yeah, I think, do we discount it a little bit? It's 1,800 per year.
EDU, so
So-
for instance, the ones that went in over here,
They
They're
paid
40
12, yeah.
EDUs, so they paid,
Yeah, here's a good illustration
Yeah.
right here.
$1,800 for the capacity fee. Well, this is what the new proposed rate is. Right now, they're paying 1,200
Right.
and then 582.
Yeah, I updated this for the proposed rates, but
And the sewer's 17 and
So right now, we're only
17.
collecting 12.
And 18 is the proposed.
18 is
Okay.
what's proposed, yeah. It's,
So realistically, this way the new development helps pay for the,
So so the new apartment on North Main, they pay 1,200 apartment.
per
Yeah.
EDU.
For
yeah.
80 units.
82.
Yeah, I just put 40 in this illustration, but yeah, they paid for 80.
Okay. At 1,200. Okay.
Yes.
Like I said, people will be asking questions. We gotta.
No, I.
Yeah, or ask about other ways to raise money because, I mean, I appreciate that on your first slide here, you said, you know, the town postponed until the water treatment plant was completed. And then the town further postponed until the water quality issues were rectified. I mean, I would argue that the water quality issues were rectified maybe within the past month or two. Like, I think only within the past couple months are there data coming back and people sort of not complaining as much on Facebook and things like that, but.
Well, I think it was they added polymers to the treatment process that has helped.
Well,
I know.
Well, that might be, but I'm saying people endured a very long time of, people were throwing up, people's clothes were getting damaged, people's appliances were getting damaged. All of my plumbing is destroyed in my bathroom because of sediments and deposits and things like that from the water. So I can't imagine that it's just me. A lot of people have been complaining on Facebook for a long time. And this all just kind of quieted down just recently. And so I don't know, that's just why I bring up maybe if we could think creatively about other ways to raise money. I know it
I've been
seems pretty.
nervous about this bond anticipation note maturing before we're.
Right,
ready
I was
to-
about to say, I can appreciate on here that it looks like something needs to be done very soon. But I just put out there the question, what else can we do? Because I
Well-
think people would need to hear that we at least tried to think of some other way. And as Fritz is saying, we need to be able to very clearly explain what this is all about. And that it's going to be for 20 years to pay off this loan and that it was for the water treatment plant. And I think people are still kind of getting comfortable with the idea that the water coming out of the water treatment plant is as good as the water from before because it was very
Good.
bad for a long time.
That's what I heard and that's a shame. Yeah, that's,
But I feel comfortable looking at this comparison to other cities and what.
yeah. I mean, you
what
guys are
works.
still on the low end of the curve there. Yeah, that's a good one. That's the best slide in the deck. right
You
there.
should have this one up.
I know. Maybe I should do that, but, okay.
You need a publicity
I know.
person this slide should have been number one.
It's a good point.
Yeah,
You know, if
we
we're-
are gonna have
Should've been
we
front.
are gonna have to have a public hearing on the rate ordinance, and this is really the first pass, so I mean, we're gonna take your comments and to the extent we can integrate any good idea, and
But this
Presentation.
First page, or
I-
second. page.
I'll put that before the cover page.
Yeah.
But that is and I know your sewer rates are competitive. The water rates have been really, really low for a long time. I mean, you compare that to buying a bottle of water at the gas station or even buying the water from do you get Nestle's water delivered to your house? I do too at my
I-
house.
I carry my water from the grocery store in a 5-gallon jug. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. We have a guy that delivers it because we go through a lot of water, but that's heavy, those 5-gallon jugs. My wife won't pick one of those up. I have to move those, but
Well, anyway, thank you for
Yeah,
for
no.
answering those questions because I think I just the timing just seems a little tough. But if it's got a water treatment plant had to be built, a bill's got to get paid.
timing is always tough. I mean,
Yeah, because we've been talking about this for 2 or
Oh, I
3
know.
years. And that's why I kind of know a little bit more
And-
about it because that was my only rub was
This
outside
has
of
been
the
making me
town of
nervous for
Fortville.
3 years.
That, well, people are, 100,000 gallons and it's like, they get better and better as the rates go, but more and more.
The
they're
rate for
gonna put in there.
100,000 gallons is gonna go up $229 a month.
Hmm.
The bill for a 100,000 gallon customer will go up $229 a month.
It'll go up that much or go up to that?
No, it goes up that much. Right now, it's $232 and it'll go up to $460.
Okay.
So the big users are getting hit.
That's, we talked
Yeah,
about
this-
that for a
yeah.
while, that they're not paying, when we conserve here in Fortville and they're not conserving. And that makes it a little bit a bite.
I
I'd like
get
the
it.
water. to be up.
I saw the TV stuff last year. Was that last year? A couple of years ago.
No, it was the last year and the year before, I think, maybe
Yeah.
the last couple of years.
But
What capacity? Oh, I'm sorry, I had
And I
a
really-
question.
If it's the homeowners association paying, that are the big ones that are really sucking it, isn't it? They're getting a better rate if they go to 50,000.
They should pay a premium. They should be paying a premium
they,
for watering fancy plants, I would think.
and
They pay
you know, now that you have the capacity to sell more water, the more water you sell, the more revenue you bring in.
Yeah.
So it's a little different situation than before where you didn't have the capacity to really provide those peak, that was really putting a strain on your system. Now you've got a lot of breathing room and we're going to be collecting capacity fees in, going forward. And so you're going to get more money from new development coming in to buy into the system. And hopefully, that will cover the next well you have to drill and the next filter you have to install. How many filters can you add to the plant?
One more.
So it's built, you got a big footprint that you can add.
Yeah, we
So-
built a plant designed to hold another filter and
Was it 8
quite a bit more
MGD?
expansion.
Was it 8 MGD if you built it all out, or?
I don't remember, now it's 2.2, so it'd probably be about 3 million.
So
If we go, another question, if we go with this rate increase, how much would our sales go up in 1 year?
it'll go up at least 50%. There's going to be some that we're going to, by merging some of these rate blocks, we're going to pick up some extra revenue. Even going from 333 to 4,000, there'll be some additional revenue in that additional 667 gallons that'll be in that first rate block.
So our revenue right now is 1.6 million.
1.26 million plus the other, the fire protection charges.
So the
and
total.
Pardon me?
So you're
Total,
thinking it's gonna go up how much?
total current normalized revenue is almost about 1.7 million.
Okay, yeah, I said 1.6,
Yeah.
yeah. And then it's gonna go up
That's on, it's
You're
on the
thinking
revenue
it's gonna-
requirement slide. in
with
middle
the
of
rate,
page.
with the rate increase, how much is it gonna go up?
It's gonna go up, let's see, about 600 some thousand here. 678,000.
It's gonna go up 600, okay.
No, but it looks like the revenue is going down on that slide from current to proposed. It looks like it's going from 1.78 million to 1.71 million.
Yeah, I took some of the interest income off because I assume if we're spending down some of the cash and if interest rates come down, I didn't want to have too rosy of a number projecting interest income because interest income was high last year. You had, that extra 1.5 million that we're going to spend down. And then I think there were times where you could earn 4 or 5% last year. Now it's probably, I think now it's more down to maybe 3%. I'm not sure what,
Didn't we borrow that money for like crazy, like 3% or something like
less
that?
than that. 2.6. Yeah.
Point six
Which
percent.
are-
But what's it gonna be now?
It's gonna be closer to 5.
5, okay.
Mr. Krohn, I wondered what are the capacity fees like in these other towns? You had a slide about
I can add a slide.
rate?
I have a database that has a bunch of those, but these are still conservative. I mean, when you get up in the $3,500, $4,000 an EDU, that gets,
What's EDU?
I'm sorry, equivalent dwelling unit or household equivalent. I apologize we live in the EDU is a TLA, 3-letter acronym, but
Thank you,
I
yeah.
apologize for.
So you were saying that when the capacity fees get up to 3,500 or 4,000, what?
Yeah, then, I mean, if you raise them too high, you get the Home Builders Association filing a lawsuit against you. And, we want to have something that's reasonable. This is a 50% increase from what we've been charging. And it's something we can look at every couple of years without changing the metered rates, but,
Well, that's why I was wondering about what the other towns are charging for theirs, because this is a good slide, 8, or 10,
Some of,
10
like,
rather.
in
This-
in Greenfield, they charge on an acreage basis, for the capacity fee, and then they have a connection fee that's probably a little bit higher than where we are, but.
Well, what I'm driving at is maybe
I'll come
we
up
could,
with some.
maybe we could look at charging people more for the privilege of coming here, a little bit more than charging the people who were already here, because part of the
Right.
point of the water treatment plant was to be able to have more capacity of water for more new people, right?
Part of it. The other part of it was the old plant was long past its life expectancy and was chugging along like the
Mhm.
chitty chitty bang bang.
I thought he had
I
said
think
something
that-
earlier, that the Indiana code says that the people that are here currently have to pay for it, right? Isn't that what he said? Something about an Indiana code that says, is that why the capacity fees
Yeah, we-
aren't figured into the?
Well, there's two things. The code sets out the rate-making formula, and it uses shall, not may, except for if you want to build in a return on investment or a pilot payment. You've got a pilot payment, but it's a very modest pilot payment. It's really a debt service payment at 40,000. That's going to pay off the MPO bonds that we didn't want to raise property taxes for because you're already at the circuit breaker cutoff. So it was decided we would use a combination of water and sewer pilot plus TIF, and then the TIF prepaid their obligation. They were paying 50,000 a year, I think. But then they paid that off and we bought down the MPO bond somewhat. That's another one that Greenfield Bank, I believe, helped us with. But what I will do is, as we move forward, and I'll probably try to do this week, now that we have, a presentation put together, take it to the folks at Greenfield Banking Company just to see how long they would feel comfortable going out on a deal for the town. If we can get them to go 15 years, then they're essentially buying into the fact that we're going to continue to have growth from these capacity fees, and they're still going to be covered. If we go to Standard & Poor's for a rating and an open market bond, it's going to be a lot stricter. We'll have to, show that, we don't need growth to pay off the bond and produce, the desired coverage ratio. But I'll try to follow up with rate comparisons on the connection and capacity fees. And then I'll talk to the folks at the bank to see, what their thoughts are on a term that they would feel comfortable with, because they like to help out communities that they, have their banks in, and they've been extremely generous with Fortville over the years. So but we do need to get through some of these other hurdles, regardless of where we market the bonds, because time's running out and it takes a while to adopt these rate ordinances and bond ordinances and then plan the sale if we can do a private placement. That sort of simplifies things and gives us a little more flexibility on not just the coverage ratio, but also on the prepayment terms. If we go with the open market, we got to wait 10 years to redeem bonds early. And if we get, another 500 customers and we build up that capacity fee fund and we're paying 5% interest and only earning 3% or 2%, we want to pay those bonds off early. The bank loves it when you pay things off early. Bondholders, they want to make sure that they can count on at least 10 years of that
They probably
investment.
want us to pay it off. It's a 2.6.
They do want us to pay it off, I guarantee you, but we're already pushing the envelope with getting it done by October 15th. But yeah, they would have loved to seen that one paid off 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
2 years ago, so.
Okay.
But
I understand.
there wasn't a big incentive for us to
No.
prepay it, but we're getting down to the wire now, so.
Okay.
Let me see, let's go through, I think I've got some stuff on Senate Bill 1 that maybe we could, are you comfortable for now? And I'll come back with some more
Yeah, I think so.
rate comps. And I'll try to, if I can get everybody's email, I'll be glad to send the whole council the, some of that additional information so that I think, well, is the plan to introduce rates and bonds at the next meeting?
Yeah, you beat me to the punch. I know you've got a slide on this, but to jump ahead, I mean, just
Yeah.
procedurally, we'll be able to, the thought was to have the first reading on the ordinance at the next council meeting in 2 weeks. So that
That's just an introduction.
just an introduction.
Yeah.
And so that we can continue having
And
these
then-
updated figures that in comparisons that Buzz is talking about and
And then we'd have a public
Yeah.
hearing in June sometime.
correct.
And then we've got 2 or 3, couple of months to figure out how we're going to sell the bonds and then another month or so to get it closed. So it goes pretty quick. Sounds like a long time,
But time to do
Yeah.
address Vanessa, your questions and the comp.
but I'll
things
get
like
those
that.
comps on the other connection and availability, they call them system development charges. That's the nomenclature for all those kinds of capital fees. But we call them capacity fees and connection fees here. Some places call them availability fees and capacity fees. And, there's lots of different names but it all falls under the umbrella of a system development charge where new people are paying to buy into your system. And I've got a database with a bunch of those. I may need to update a bunch of them, but I'll get some good rate comps there too.
I would like to bring up too, if I could, since you're going to introduce the rate ordinance at the next meeting and I will not be here. I'll be missing that meeting, unfortunately. But we had talked about the water deposit, the $36 a month that
Oh.
we charge.
Yeah,
Here's last 2 years, we've collected, what was it, 1,058 deposits at $38,088. And we have to return those. So not only do we get them, track them, then turn around 11 months, pay them back out because we have to start paying interest if we hold it longer than 12. So we're paying them out after 11 months. So then it goes to the clerk, the clerk writes a check, and it's a lot of people touching it, takes a lot of time. But out of that $38,088, we only applied $206 to the bills out of all that. So that is something that will probably show up on that
yeah, I've got
that
that.
rate. I just wanted, since I'm not gonna be here, I want to be
Go
able.
back another slide or two there. Making Adam, sorry. Go back another one, one more. All right. Ah, shit, where is that? Maybe I didn't put that on a slide, but we do have where the 36 is, we've got 0, oh, it's in the rate, I didn't have that in there.
That's a good, but Joe, you're right. I mean, I think what you're getting
It's
at.
more
it's the
administrative
doing
hassle
with
than it's
that.
worth.
Right.
It's still got the water
I mean, the $36,000 or
38,000.
38,000
We
and
turn around and give it right back in 11 months.
yeah, so it's just not worth it.
If people are
Which is good news.
homeowners,
We've got
they're
people that are
pretty
paying their
good.
bills and.
Right.
We've got a lot of transient
Yeah.
renters, sometimes that's a problem, but you can't really discriminate against renters anymore either. It's gotta be. It's not like the good old days, no.
Yeah.
But, let's chat just a little bit about Senate Bill 1. Also, there's a new requirement, which I believe is going to impact, before we leave the utility subject, in the red highlight there, House Bill 1459 requires that all the utilities establish a utility asset management plan. And that's for water and sewer. And if we don't do it, they're going to put out, there's information yet to come that will identify all the minimum requirements they want, but it's pretty similar to the ones that SRF uses. And to get a new SRF loan, you have to have one.
I think everybody's got to do it now, don't they, by the end of 26?
Yeah,
I think
there's still time there, and they're going to put out information, but I'm assuming it's going to be just like the SRF program.
Mhm.
But it comes up with really detailing out your fixed assets, you know, in as much detail as possible, and then setting forth, you know, maybe a 20-year replacement and improvement program that's likely based on their depreciation rates or other information that you know is going to have to happen. So that's going to be something that will require, you know, obviously input from the utility superintendents, probably your consulting engineers, which I'm not sure who that is right now, but
It varies.
and then we can help with that also.
I did look through the documents today that kind of explained it, and there's a lot of information as far as they want to know everything you have as far as hydrants,
Number
valve,
linear
pipes,
feet of X.
what year they will
size
put
pipe.
in, give it an ID number and,
Yeah.
you know, name, rank and serial number, all that stuff. So there's a lot to go into it. We've got a pretty good handle on all of our assets.
Yeah.
We've got the
We
GIS.
just
and everything
did
labeled.
put in a form.
I can tell you exactly how many feet of 8-inch PVC pipe I got, how many 6-feet pipe. But when they start breaking it down to segments, I don't have it broke down, and this is, you know,
And a lot of it,
water line number 1, water line number 2, water line.
and a lot of it might be contributed from subdivisions that they contribute it to you. Do you log that also?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's something that I just wanted to mention. But the primary things with Senate Bill 1, number 1, it's not going to have much impact next year. We'll still get a 4% growth, or the increase in our maximum levy. We'll get that next year. But then after that, it goes away. But I believe that you could still have a maximum levy increase, but you have to pass it at a public meeting. Have you gotten into that depth yet? I've been doing a lot of research on this past week. But I think there is still a way to do that. And with the growth rate that you're getting, you're not going to get, we used to get excess levy appeals. We've done that the last 3 or 4 years. And, you know, we've raised your levy considerably without raising the tax rate. In fact, your tax rate dropped about 33 cents last year, I think. On the notes. Uh-oh. Sorry. The local income tax is a big change. Again, next year, it's the same. I think that doesn't really take effect till 27, pay 28. But it's gonna, the town will get its own 1.2%, up to 1.2% local income tax. Because you're over 3,500 population, You don't have to rely on the county for that. But you have to pass it every year, which means, right now the county passes it once and then it's that way until it changes, but they're making you have it every year as part of your budget process to readopt the local income tax, and probably in the early years, you may want to put the maximum one in. People's property taxes are going to go down, especially homeowners, because they're basically increasing the supplemental homestead exemption to about 2/3 of the value, and then they're putting credits on top of that. The credits will be treated like circuit breaker. So if you've got 1,000 homesteads or 1,500 homesteads, and they all qualify for the $300 tax credit, that's 450,000. Is that 450,000? 1,500 times 300, yeah, $450,000. That comes off like circuit breaker does. The change in some of the valuation things will increase the tax rate, but there are other changes that will decrease the tax rate. TIF, if the tax rate goes down, obviously that hurts the TIF program. Right now, you're generating about as much in the TIF program as you do in your levy. And lit, they're all sort of about the same, in the same range. So TIF is still the best source of getting money for capital projects. There's going to be some changes in how often you can do general obligation or tax supported bond issues. And we do those periodically for major equipment and police cars. Are those sort of the two?
Mhm.
So this is another Dennis question. If we ram through a GO bond before the end of this year, is that a good technique to, at least prolong?
I'm not sure when our current GEO bond runs out. I think we've still got a couple of years on it.
Yeah, they do. So you could potentially,
Is that a 6 or 7 year
it
bond?
wouldn't impact the residential homeowners that are at the tax caps, but it gets you a little bigger piece of the pie of the lit that's out there right now. But there's pros and cons to all that. But once you have one GO bond pay off, you have to wait a year to issue the next one. And you can't do the referendum. They're all controlled projects. That means you've got to have a petition to, if it's 25-cent total debt levy or less, you still have to go through the controlled project procedures. Right now, you've got 2 bonds outstanding that add up to 13 cents. So you're not at the cutoff there. But if it goes over 25 cents, then it becomes a referendum. The referendums are doomed to fail usually. People go around, sign here for lower taxes, and everybody signs them, but they're doomed to fail. But we don't really know how all these changes are going to impact each individual community. The legislative services people have done some big broad picture things, but until we find out from Department of Revenue how much taxable income is just within the town of Fortville, we don't get credit for the ones outside of town, just within the town. And then we apply that 1.2 cent maximum rate, then we can see at least what the potential is. And hopefully we'll have that, but Department of Revenue, that's not an easy thing to set up probably. So the county gets quite a few different menu of things that they can assess local income tax for. They get 1.2% for county expenses. They can get another 1.2% so that they can give money to the towns that are below 3,500 population. They can get 0.4% for fire and EMS subsidies, and 0.2% for other. But they're capped at 2.9. So the total potential, if they went to the 2.9 county cap and you went to the cap on the 1.2, it'd be 4%, over 4% in local income tax. It seems like the governor's trying to push out, costs out of property tax into income tax, It's good for the farmers, they don't really pay too much income tax. They get a lot of tax breaks that help them control their income tax, and they hate property tax, and they start getting deductions. There's a series of deductions that ag will get on their property taxes. So it's pretty dramatic changes there. Business personal property taxes, that only applies to new equipment. So I don't think we have a whole lot of that in our TIF area to begin with, but some TIF areas, that can be a pretty big number. But again, existing business personal property tax that's in the pipeline right now, that stays in the pipeline. So that's sort of a real broad general overview. I did write down a few observations. No, I'll shut up after this, I promise. Starting to bore myself after talking something. It's always the last place you look, isn't it? I mean, why would you keep looking if?
Yeah.
But in 2025, your property tax rate is $3, total property tax rate is $3.14. In 2024 was $3.43. So you've had in the total tax rate, there's been a pretty good reduction. A lot of that has to do with new assessed valuation. Probably some of it has to do with schools. Schools are kind of getting really the shaft on a lot of this stuff. But again, those geo bond restrictions, if it's 1 year, that 1 year you have to wait after paying one off. Usually people like to manage their tax rate by having a new geo bond kick in right when the old one pays off. So it's going to seesaw the property tax rate a little bit because they make you wait a year until after the other one's paid off. Then everything is a control project. And 40 cents, if you get up to 40 cents on total tax rates for debt, it's a referendum. We got to have, those are tough. Your tax base in 2021 was 138 million. This year it's 289 million. So you've had, and that's after taking out the TIF. So you've had, good success in getting those excess levy appeals. Those are gone. That's helped drive our levy up. It didn't really change anybody's property tax. If you're at the tax cap, it doesn't matter. It's just money that we don't collect. We're losing about $480,000 this year on circuit breaker losses out of a $1.9 million levy. But again, our TIF revenue is about the same as what our levy revenue is. So that's been a real godsend. And we haven't really started the 25-year clock yet on the new areas. I think some of the old area, by, is it Camus? I forget all the guys that were in that original TIF area. Some of those may fall off at a certain point, but all the new consolidated area is still, the clock hadn't really started on that yet, so. That's sort of my update there. And I apologize for being long-winded tonight, and I appreciate all the good questions, really, I do. And I will work on comps for the capacity fees and system development charges. And so the other thing I was gonna look at for you guys. Do you remember, Joe?
Never look at the minutes.
Yeah, if I'm missing something, I know I want to get those to you. I'll get some other rate comps that show different levels of usage, what the increase is.
I think you were gonna do a little explaining on the,
Oh,
how the blocks work.
on the rate locks, yeah, I'll. I'm on it, and I think I can get all of your emails off the website, is that right, or? I know I've got Fritz.
I can get it to you.
Okay. Thank you, I apologize.
Thanks, Buzz. That's okay.
No, thank you, thank you.
But this is, I know, brand new for at least a couple of you. But we really do have to take care of that $11 million bond anticipation note. We can buy it down, and I will try to follow up with Greenfield Bank. That's.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you all.
Thanks,
for-
Buzz.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Old business, second reading of the ordinance for sidewalk maintenance. Joe, you wanna?
Yeah.
Yeah,
At the last meeting, I think there was it just one change, Alex, that we needed to make?
Correct.
So you should have a red line copy there in front of you, and then a changed copy. But in under 94.71 sidewalk maintenance and snow removal, we had changed the language in there to notify the public needs to notify the town within a reasonable time for any damage or hazards associated with all the cement, asphalt, concrete, rather than, requiring them to fix it. The requirement is just to notify us so we can address it. Other than that, everything's the same as what was discussed at the last meeting.
I had some editorial comments about it. Unless anybody else had any questions. Alex, I think there's some words here that are sort of extra. Maybe they're left over from something else, but where it says, cement, asphalt, concrete walks
Where are you at?
and sidewalks, right here under general maintenance.
What number? A1?
A1,
Okay.
right after the added language that Joe just mentioned. So then it says, which have been heretofore or hereafter laid in front of or upon or adjacent to, I think that's extraneous language. I don't know, that's one editorial comment. What do you mean hereafter laid,
That they're put in after this ordinance is adopted.
Oh, the way it reads, it sounds like the sidewalk is laid after the person made the complaint. Anyway, to me, it sounds extra, but that's just my 2 cents about that. And then at the end, it says, in good repair and free from other dangerous obstructions and or conditions. And I thought they were reporting it because it's not in good repair. So is that left over from something else?
No, that's part of the obligations, and they're notifying the towns to help keep them in good repair and free from their dangerous obstructions or conditions.
I just think the whole way it's written is verbose. I don't think people would read this and really understand what it means with all the heretofore and hereafter and all the commas, and it's just a run-on sentence. So, I mean, since we're just looking at it again, I'm just sitting here looking at it, and I understand the intent. The intent is good. The grammar, I think, is confusing in that paragraph. If you're trying to say that, if you're trying to say sidewalks that have been laid before or after this ordinance was written, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I think that's obvious. Anyway. And also, you know, if they're reporting it in order, if they're reporting damage and hazards in order to keep the sidewalk in good repair, I think that's also, I think that's implied. But also, you know, I just had a general comment that this whole section is called maintenance of sidewalks. And so 94.71 is called sidewalk maintenance and snow removal. And then A is general maintenance. And so then there's 4 sections that are part of that. But nowhere does it actually say the town will maintain the sidewalk. There's only the responsibility of the property owner to report sidewalk damage. I think it would logically flow to say the town maintains the sidewalks, and then it is the duty of owners of the properties to report the problems with the sidewalks. But again, that's why I say it's editorial. Also, if you move down to section B, snow removal, so there's subsections 1, 2, and 3, and then it says section 2. I wondered if maybe that's an error or a typo, because section 1 of the ordinance says it is, the code shall be amended to include the following. But the stuff that is within what is labeled as section 2, I mean, that's part of the stuff that's getting added. So I wondered if that was a mistake. Looked like an error to me.
I think so. We're adding all of those, we're amending it to include the following sections, so 94.70 through, which includes 7.71 A and B.
Right, but section B includes this fee schedule, no?
You know, he said was part of, there's a separate section, Title 1, Chapter 11 of Section 11.02 is amended as follows. It's a different section of the ordinance. See at the top, after the recitals, start with section 1. And then section 2 is the amendment to the schedule of offenses and the penalties, the fee schedule. The penalty schedule.
Title 1, so the fee schedule is going to appear somewhere else in our ordinance code,
It does.
not right under the snow removal?
No, all of the penalties are consolidated under chapter 11.
So
So they're all in one
is
place.
there a reference? Is there a reference anywhere in 94.71 that says go look here for the fee schedule?
Well, it's not a fee, it's a penalty. But
Okay,
the
fine,
town's penalty schedule,
fine, a penalty schedule, but does it say anywhere? I mean, the body language doesn't say, and there shall be penalties. It says, let's see. And in the table, it says violation type sidewalk maintenance, 9471A, 9471B. Why doesn't it just say snow removal for 90?
Because you have general maintenance and snow removal. They're two different.
But A
That's
and
why it
B,
listed twice.
but A is general maintenance and B is snow removal.
Right.
If I could try to clear something up or maybe even make it worse, I don't know, but I hope not. This ordinance, the way it's written, just describes all the changes and then the fee schedule or the fine schedule violations. Once these are adopted by council, they get sent off to be codified. And once they codify them, they clean them all up, and that's where you can see them online. And then at the bottom of each one of these categories, it will have the ordinance number at the bottom, and then it will also have the fee schedule, where to find that, and it'll be at the bottom as well.
Who's they?
We typically use American Legal.
Okay, so I'm just pointing out here that the language here doesn't explicitly point to, it doesn't say, and there shall be penalties, and there's gonna be a table. It doesn't say that anywhere. So how do you know to go look in chapter 11 for a table?
Open.
But Title IX and Title I are different parts. They're different files you open on the website. So if you're looking through, if you're flipping through Title IX, Chapter 94, and you're like, I want to know about my obligations about sidewalks, it says, you know, you shall report it, and if you don't report it, then you're responsible for it. And that's it, that's the end of it. And so what is the,
It's in the table of contents of the code of ordinances that penalty.
why doesn't section A and section B, why don't they just say, see Title I, Chapter 11 for penalty schedule?
The council wants to add that second reading. I'm happy with that. Yep. 71B instead of snow removal.
Yeah.
Because that is all part of the maintenance of sidewalks is the title. And the snow removal is one part of the maintenance to snow when it's there.
But snow removal is B, so column, the
Right.
second column here, code section 9471A, 9471B. A is general maintenance and B is snow removal, so why doesn't the first column say general maintenance and snow removal? I think it's confusing. Why ever would you have two columns that have the same title when they're referring to sections with different titles?
Different. But if the council, I mean, any of these changes, I mean, substantively doesn't do anything to the ordinance, so second reading.
So just to clarify, so for section A, subsection 2, if you fail to report, you know, damage that you know about of the sidewalk, you're going to be responsible for it. That's what it says here. You know, if somebody fails to notify the town in violation of this ordinance or the town's related policies shall be responsible and liable for injuries and damages. So already, like if you fail to report damage on your sidewalk, you're on the hook, you're going to be responsible for it. But in addition to that, there's also a penalty for not reporting your sidewalk damage?
Yep. Could be a-
They'll assume liability. That's the penalty.
But here it says there's also going to be $100, $250, and $500 fines for not reporting.
Not a. Well. to go in a claim that would have liability. It's like every time you get a speeding ticket, you may not also have a personal property damage claim or worse related to your speeding. But if you have if you're speeding and you cause an accident, you're gonna get a speeding ticket, a reckless driving ticket, you're gonna pay those penalties, and then you're also gonna have the liability for the person that you ran into.
But
So
this,
that's why
yeah.
the liability and indemnification is separate and apart from the penalty enforcement ability that the town has under the ordinance.
But it seems like this table changed because we had a table that said if you don't remove the snow, you're gonna have penalties, right? We all looked at that. But it looks like this got added. Now there's a new part where you also get a fine if you fail to report. What does that even mean? How would you be found to have failed to report damaged sidewalk? How would such a penalty happen? Did this table change? Was that a row before?
It was, the last meeting when we went through this is exactly like that.
But not the first time around.
No, it's that it'd be set.
that there would be 2 columns. Then originally, I think it was just one penalty for the entire section, and somebody has to have.
But it wasn't one penalty for the whole section. It was one penalty specifically for snow removal. That table was an attribute of only section B.
Maybe. But from the first
Did-
reading to tonight, there were no changes
Did-
to the penalty.
Did somebody here want to add penalties for failing to report the sidewalk? Because Alex says somebody asked for it. I didn't ask for it. Any of
No,
you
like
guys?
I said, the penalty schedule was there.
Yes, yes, as I said, there
Breaking
was
it out.
for snow removal, but you're saying that somebody asked for this first column, the first row to be added? For
No, no,
section
it was-
A?
A consolidated. Setting.
I think that's the way it was.
Broken out into 2 sections, A and B, one for the general maintenance and then one.
I can pull out my copy out of my car, but I think it was just a table that was just about snow removal. And we talked about it because Chief Bratton had that idea to have the volunteer kids and that the first time would be a warning only and not a fee. It was all about just the snow removal. It didn't have anything to do with reporting the damage on the sidewalk. And I'm just asking the question. I don't even know how you could be found guilty of failing to report damage on the sidewalk.
I would have to go back and re-watch the minutes from the council meetings from before. But as I recall, it seemed like it was one of the council members requested to have those separated out, have them both individually. So that's the reason why it was put in there that way.
And these are civil penalties, so it's not a beyond a reasonable doubt to your question about proving. If it's more likely than not that someone knew or should have known about something that should have been reported under this and they just weren't fulfilling their duty under this ordinance to report it to the town and notify the town. And I think that would be the case that you could make to a penalty and issuing a violation.
What would make the case?
If the facts of the situation, if you had a sidewalk that was, in front of your house and it was in a dangerous condition for your cause or not your cause, you have neighbors telling you about it, but it's in front of your house. You have the obligation under the ordinance as the property owner to report that, and you just ignored it and didn't do it, then that's how you would prove it. And it's fact sensitive. There are lots of different scenarios and we can litigate them, but it's a civil penalty. It's not a criminal offense, so it's not a beyond a reasonable doubt. It's more likely than not evidence. And I mean, there's one example of how you can prove that.
Let's say you drive a big truck over your sidewalk and you break it, but you don't report that you broke the sidewalk. Somebody trips and falls, that'll be on you.
Yes, so you'll get sued and you'll get $100 ticket.
Yeah,
If it's your
because you
second.
broke it.
Well,
You
and
didn't
if it's your
report it.
second time, then you get sued and it's a
Well-
$250 ticket. If you're having people driving over your sidewalk all the
No,
time.
no.
But that's another
That's a
example
scenario
of
that
how
you-
that
that might
you knew
never-
about it or should have known
Yeah.
about it, didn't.
Yeah. if you
Alex,
break it, you should-
Alex, would that also include like when people park their cars on the walks and set basketball goals out there and
Seen that
leave.
this weekend, people.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay, so
that's
this,
discouraging.
okay, so any owner of any such premises who shall allow any such sidewalk to remain in disrepair or in a dangerous condition, which could include cars parked there, basketball hoop, whatever, like toys sitting out there, whatever, or that your contractor crunched over it with the semi and you don't fix it and you leave it like that.
Well, you don't fix it, you have to report it. You can't fix a public sidewalk.
No, I'm saying, well, if you don't move the car or move the toy, or if you don't report the damage.
Right.
And if somehow Jerry should walk by or Joe walks by and sees it, then you get a fine. Okay,
Could be, I will say.
Well, you might not get a fine. If he sees that you broke the sidewalk, Joe's just gonna fix it and send you the bill.
Most of the time, we have a verbal discussion before we go sending out fines. So we try not to be the heavy hand that goes out finding and billing everybody until we've had a discussion and warning and asking them to, remove any obstructions or.
I didn't have a discussion. I just fixed it.
Yeah.
Which is what people should do if they damage it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If people damage the sidewalk, they should fix it. And so the first row accounts for when people are found to have broken their own sidewalk or they're blocking the sidewalk. I mean, really, it's like almost like an ADA thing. If they're blocking the sidewalk with cars or toys or things and, people can't pass. Okay, I would still say that these two rows in this table should be renamed to reflect the name of the section that they go to, because the code section already does that as well. There's no reason to give it a wrong name that's not the section name. General maintenance and snow removal. That's my recommendation. All right.
Okay.
Those are my comments. I mean,
You have to make a motion to get that. Then start the cycle if you want to make those changes.
I make a motion to make these editorial changes, the name of the two rows in the table in section 11.02, schedule of offenses and penalties, and also for Alex to take a look at the language of paragraph 94.71A1 for verbosity.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay. Okay, so looking for a new motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the second reading of ordinance number 2025-4A, the sidewalk and maintenance ordinance.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we need to put some signatures on here this time, so. Joe, you want to go ahead with you have anything for us?
Yeah, just real quick, and Andy took off, I was gonna give him kudos, he's been working on our report and issue for the
See that?
website.
Yeah.
There's still some bugs to work out on it, but, it's pretty detailed. I know you go in and click right on the front page at the bottom on the right, it's, I think it says report an issue. You click on that, it lets you put in a picture. You can state what the issue is, put your contact information in to be able to keep, tabs on what's going on, the status of it. So between that and, currently anything like that can be reported to the front office and they do a work order for the guys as well. So not everybody has to have a computer or internet. They can still come in and fill out a form, and if they wish to have a signed copy and return so they could have their own copy, we can do that. And one other thing, I have acquired a concrete planer to help with some of those offsets. The concrete's a little, heaved up from tree roots or something.
What was the cost on that?
It was used. I got it from a rental company, but it was all refurbished for $1,000 roughly.
That's nice. The only reason I mentioned that before was that I can have employees, but if I give them a tool to use and it's manual labor to use it, but if I could find something that makes it easier, they'll volunteer to, yeah, I'll go do that. I'll go do
Right.
that. So thank you so much.
Yep. And other than that, like I say, the next meeting I will not be here. I don't like missing council meetings, but it's just when it worked out for me, so.
I got a the business owners downtown wanted to know what's going on with the bump outs. At the last meeting that we had, are we gonna plant flowers or do you
Um,
want them to try to do some kind of let them take over their own?
Yeah, I think there's some flowers in there that some of them are a little late coming up. They need to have the weeds dealt with. And I want to see what's actually coming up. But I know Heath has got a group coming in. They're going to do some mulching and stuff in the parks. And I believe they're going to work on those bump outs as well.
If they decide to volunteer to make it look better, I think one was Beth in front of Cortona's. It doesn't have any, I mean, it's really.
Yeah, I don't know what, I don't know if people just walk over and trample them down or what, but
Yeah,
there's some areas like down in front of Livery, those flowers all come back good and healthy and they look
Right.
great. You go down to the next block and it's like,
well, they
Like they
just
were
want to
trying-
know if they took it over, can they do it? Or they can't touch them. I'm just
Well, and-
asking a question.
And
Yeah.
who's,
I want to know if they can beautify it themselves, take over.
and or whose responsibility is it?
I think that's, I mean, that is a great idea, right? To have the help of the business owners to do that, but then what are the parameters of that? You know, Beth might want to go and put bushes up,
Right.
or somebody might plant a tree, or, so just giving them the
I
freedom
know,
to
but-
just do that is dangerous, in my
I know what
opinion.
They got something in front of their.
I think
in
if they
their
propose a
business.
plan, if they propose a plan to us, it kind of, meets what else is, up there or improved on what's up there, obviously, then we can work with them on that.
How
for
about they,
sure.
before they do it,
Yeah,
they
And we-
need.
some details, because I know there's, we try to practice the right tree for the right place. I love trees. I'm a big tree fan. But I know years ago, a lot of trees were planted where they were, too tall and they get into the power lines, they cut them out. Or it's the kind that the tree roots heave up sidewalks. In fact, I've got a complaint this morning, same sidewalk you talked about on Stat Street. The building owner would like to have those tree limbs trimmed off their building and then the power lines. So then it poses a question, these are beautiful trees, big skyline maples. They're heaving up the sidewalk or getting into the building. Do we take them out? They also shade the area to make it slicker for the ice and snow. So
Well, the trees that I planted will get really large, but I'm planning on keeping them top, so they're just big and round.
yeah,
And
that
they-
doesn't keep the roots from heaving up though.
So they just need to ask you first, because like I said, they got customers sitting out
Sure.
there. And
If they have a proposal for something they want to put in there and we can
I'll
say
just
that,
have them email
that's,
you.
But,
Yeah.
but at the same time though, 94.61 says that the property owner has to maintain flower beds. So it sounds like it's like by default, their responsibility anyway. So that's why I wind up asking questions like these, like if it's their responsibility to maintain their flower beds, why do they need your permission for what kind of flowers?
within a right of way, have a permit.
What, I'm sorry, what's that?
Anybody that does work within a right of way needs to have a permit.
To plant flowers?
Yeah, if they change what's there, if they want to come in and, I know we've got people that's removed sod and put stone in, they're not supposed to do that.
Well,
Mm.
somebody sent me pictures because they were upset that the bump outs were ugly and they're like, they have weeds in them while we had our Fortville in Bloom festival. So it's either the property owner's responsibility and they didn't do it and they need to be told, or it's, the town to plant the flowers.
If they're out there, like pulling weeds and putting mulch down, that's one thing, but if they're gonna come in and say, I'm removing all the stuff that the town put in, and I'm gonna plant bushes or a tree or something that they want, then
No, they're
That-
not.
that
planting,
would-
bushes and trees.
Yeah.
No, I think it's just kind of unclear. The sense that I got with the person I spoke with was it's unclear. The sidewalks on Main Street are fairly new, and I don't know if maybe some property owners are expecting that the town would take care of it the same way the town plows the snow in the winter, or if they just don't know they're supposed to do it, or if they're not sure what they're supposed to do about it. So I think it's,
it was designed as a full streetscape, from one end to the other. I believe the architect or the consultant was Context. It used to be there on Main Street. In fact, I think they were still on Main Street when they drew up the plans for that. So maybe it's something we just go back to them and see what we can do to replace what's there that didn't work and try to keep a uniform look
Okay.
along the whole street rather than everybody's looking different.
right. That's what I was wondering about, because right now it's just dirt and weeds.
Well, and-
There's a
and
couple,
some-
not all of them, but yeah, there's a couple like that.
And then the other question, how much, like in the TIF area, to alleviate some of the sidewalk, areas, can the TIF pay for sidewalks that need to be repaired? So it's not all on the town because it's in the TIF area on Main Street. From, like, from Michigan to the new apartment. Is that part of the TIF also? Or is it
No,
just-
there's,
it just
the tip jumps to the apartments. It's not
Okay.
connected to downtown.
Okay, I'm just asking the questions.
And that's,
How much-
that's actually one of the roads that kind of got my eye on.
Yeah, I think we could have that as part
Okay.
I mean, sidewalks infrastructure, it just need to be part of a project that
So
Joe and
it's-
I can talk about and.
It's the section in between the two TIFs. To get from that TIF to this TIF, that the
So
sidewalks
it's
are
not in the
pretty.
tip, but it would benefit.
It's in.
We could, we may be able to get there.
I'll shoot you some pictures.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my goal for like paving and reconstruction would be to take Main Street where the construction stopped at, Church and take it all the way up to the new apartments where we could put new curbs, new sidewalks down both sides and just extend Main Street. Of course, we started that with Merrill Street a few years ago and it goes to the ditch and we've not extended it back up either. So that's something we need
Well,
to.
what I'm talking about is a quick, right now is to get that repaired. Cause if by the time we put that all together, hell, it might be in for 5 or 6 years.
Which part are you talking about?
The sidewalks from.
Michigan.
Is there bad sections in there that you're familiar?
It's up rising. It's almost like you might as well just go to the TIF and maybe just get it all repaired, cause you're gonna have up to 80 to 160 new residents living there, and they're gonna be going from one TIF to the other TIF. And but it.
I agree. I agree with you, Fritz, but I want to say that it's kind of a juggling act. I'd say if we go down there and replace the sidewalks, we would probably postpone the road work a few years and try to get more life out of those walks. Because typically when you design the road work and the curbs and chair back and the sidewalks, everything is based, the height of the sidewalks based on the back of the curb. So we don't want to have them lower, holding water and pooling water and stuff like that. So, you know, if we do the sidewalks now and say 2 years, we come in and put on new curbs and road, then they need to be replaced again.
Pretty bad shape.
Yeah, we'll look at them.
All
And
right, just take
and
a
if
look.
you've
at it.
got any sidewalks around that you're, you know, want to see prioritized, you know, don't hesitate to let me know.
Well, no, I thought that'd be a quick, easy, is the TIF. It's in the TIF area, you know, they got a little bit more money to work also, but I'm just trying to
Right.
get stuff repaired. The other, and what was the other question I was gonna ask you? Oh, well, I'll come back to it later.
Oh, while you're thinking of that, Joe, I was wondering, how's it going with the snow blower?
I did get a price. I didn't know really which one to go look at. So I know when Heath was here and you guys talked about getting something similar to what he had for the north side that would fit on the south side. So I priced out a unit that was identical to that, except smaller, that would fit on the south side. And it was right around 24,000.
What?
24,000. And that's actually a gas unit because Heath's equipment's diesel, so it's actually a little bit of a lesser quality, I guess.
Dare I ask, how much did the north side plow cost?
I bet it was in the 30,000 range or so. I can go back and check. I've got those numbers.
Okay, okay. I don't know that that's what any of us necessarily envisioned. I thought we were talking about, you said that you needed something smaller because the sidewalk's only 5 feet. And therefore we needed some kind of a smaller like snow blower, you know, like.
Snow blower, I think.
Well, no, you're creating more work for an employee. No, I've learned from years now that you.
Don't try to.
No, you gotta, if I send somebody out to do a water damage, you know, I give them just a vacuum cleaner, they're not, my employees are gonna quit on me. I've gotta buy a $50,000 truck mount to get the water out of the basement. So you don't want to take less
Okay,
because they're not gonna want to do it, right?
okay, thank you.
Adam, you have anything for us?
Nothing for me tonight.
Well, Heath's not here. Patrick's not here. Alex, you got something for us? I do not. Public comment. Toasty, you got anything to say?
Let's hear from you.
No. Okay, council members. Libby,
I'm good.
No, thank you.
nothing from me.
Go Pacers.
Nothing.
I want to thank Andy for getting the website. Looks really nice. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, good job. Very simple and user friendly. Thank you.
Only one I wanted.
Okay, we need a motion to approve and sign vouchers.
I'll make a motion to sign vouchers tonight.
I second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye. I'll make a motion to adjourn at 8:40.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.